There does not exist another game quite like this one. NBA Hangtime 95 is a basketball game for the Sega CD, one of only 2 real basketball games for the Sega CD, and by the way, we are officially breaking the first Sega CD game barrier here. And I say only one of 2 real basketball games because there's this and NBA Jam, and then there's an FMV basketball game featuring Scottie Pippen, and then there's a side-scrolling platformer game where you play as a basketball. In a sense, these 4 games are a microcosm of the Sega CD itself, a few regular games, a few games where the whole game is based around video clips, and some dumbass weird shit. Then again, this NBA basketball game blends all of that together in its own little way. This game is based within the ESPN NBA tradition, with ESPN legend and current NBC Sports Network mainstay Dan Patrick introducing each game himself. And when I say introducing, I mean he kind of says the name of the city, and that's it. I mean, they only really had the technology they had at the time, so I don't expect that much more, but it is very sparse. The cost of Dan Patrick talking to you live on your TV on your Sega CD is, as always with the Sega CD, load times. And you've got to wait a while. First for Dan to speak, then for the key matchup of 2 players to be shown, and then you've got to wait for the game to actually start. Now once it does start, you'll see that it is somewhere between a 2D and 3D perspective. It actually reminds me a lot of the Super Nintendo NCAA basketball game I covered way back 5 years. Jesus Christ, has it been 5 years? It's a more modern camera angle than you typically see during that era. The thing that Sony ImageSoft has to make do with that Nintendo did not is the fact that the Sega CD can't really scale the court the way that the Super Nintendo can. They combat that in making the game a 2-on-2 half-court game of basketball rather than having the court rotate with the players. I don't really like this. I don't really like the 2-on-2 style of basketball anyway, and it doesn't translate well to video games at all, because the internal logic of 2-on-2 basketball, that you have to clear a shot that bounces off the rim by going back behind the 3-point line, but if it doesn't hit the rim, or if the ball is stolen, you don't have to clear it, and there's all these different rules, and they all make sense when you're physically playing, but in-game, everything moves so fast that you'll end possessions without understanding why something happened. Half-court 2-on-2 here doesn't translate as well as the full-court style of NBA Jam did, for instance. Stealing the ball happens without fanfare, and really without reason, and really without that much of an animation, so on offense you'll just sort of not be on offense after a few seconds, then like Chris Mullin is streaking to an open basket and slamming it in, and you're none the wiser. Otherwise, the defense in this game is virtually non-existent, and that's kind of scotch-taped over with the fact that you can just steal the ball at the drop of a hat. But if you're paying attention, you'll notice that. It all just sort of falls apart in terms of playing basketball. Obviously, it's not a simulation we've got here, but you still need logic even when you're unrealistic. Let's compare this to NBA Jam. It's unrealistic, sure, but you have a better chance at making a 3-pointer with John Stockton than with Karl Malone, and you're more likely to hit an uncontested shot than a contested one. In NBA Hangtime 95, there's no real sense of that. I'm hitting threes with everybody. I'm getting blocked by everybody. I'm blocking everybody, but it doesn't really seem to matter what the difference between a Rick Smits and a Reggie Miller is. That's kind of the unfortunate thing here, because it's a 2-on-2 game. In a 2-on-2 game, you're really digging into that personality and the style of play of each of those 4 players. The 2-person combo is indicative of what makes up a great basketball team. You hear about Jordan and Pippen, Shaq and Kobe, Magic and Kareem. And the big thing about all of those pairs is that they each have differences that complement each other. In this game, effectively, no one player is that much different from another. I was playing with the Cavaliers, and I was having the same things happen between Mark Price and Brad Daugherty, driving to the basket and getting blocked, shooting 3-point jumpers, getting tip steals. I cannot think of 2 more different players on the same team, other than perhaps the magical combination of Muggsy Bogues and Manute Bol in the 1988 Bullets, but these guys are playing just like each other. This is the thing that kills the game for me. It's a game from 1994, and really I'm playing it today to play with the great players of 1994, like Horace Grant and Penny Hardaway and not Shaq, since this was during the time when he wasn't with the Players Association and his likeness belonged to Shaq and Shaq alone, and he was fighting mummies and rapping with Fushnikins and sipping on Pepsi juice. And that's a real lyric from a song, by the way. I don't smoke, but I'll sip on Pepsi juice. My point is that NBA Hangtime 95 is unremarkable as a basketball game and only slightly remarkable as a 1994 Sega CD game, and only really kind of enjoyable to play at all. Now, it should be noted that just about every basketball game now has this viewpoint as standard, so I suppose it could be commended for that, but even the NCAA basketball game on Super Nintendo had this viewpoint before it, and that even had full court play, and it's not even really the first to do that either. So I won't say to totally avoid this game, but there's a lot that could be better, and ultimately it's an unsatisfying basketball experience. Unless You press A on the title screen and you get the chance to play the hidden alternative game, which isn't listed on the game box or front cover at all, ESPN 2-on-2 Basketball World Tour. Stuck-up, white-collar Dan Patrick is replaced with... Okay, well, I shouldn't be so mean to Dan Patrick. ESPN anchor Dan Patrick is replaced with the late, great ESPN2 anchor Stuart Scott. And instead of simply stating the name of the city we're going to, he has to make a joke about the country we're about to play in.
What up, gang? I'm Stuart Scott, kicking it with you with ESPN's 2-on-2 World Tour. We're in Germany. You thought the Autobahn was fast? Wait till you see this slam in action in this basketball game.
Because this game, as the title would say, is not a professional game, but a game where fictional national teams compete against one another. And by national, I mean maybe racist? Maybe just like culturally unnuanced, like Mike Tyson's Punch-Out's depiction of the French and the Russians. The Japanese team is two sumo wrestlers, is what I'm trying to say. The London team is two stereotypical London cops with their big hats and everything, and I had them playing in Africa, and the African team kicked their ass, Lucien Coldier style. And then there's the Canadian team who's playing in huge coats, and the German guys are all white and skinny, and the Australian guys are wearing Stetsons. This has all of the flaws of the NBA game, but it's hidden away from the player, and I had no idea it existed when I bought the game. But honestly, I prefer this bit, because it's ridiculous. You're playing as two Stetson-wearing Australians against two fully winter weather prepared Canadians in the outback in front of two kangaroo silhouettes that are boxing. This whole game, really the two games on one disc, as a basketball game, is so unusual that I sort of recommend it just for the spectacle, but the spectacle kind of wears off after about 20 to 30 minutes, and it's just nothing to write home about after that.
News?